Welcome. We got to it's a little late. It's a little late, but it's fine. It's all right. It's a little late to be getting started, but it's all right. I'm still woke. Um I don't have I didn't burn too much of my time today, you know. I just wanted to give myself some time to digest dinner. And I ate dinner a little later than I usually. I usually eat dinner about 4 o'clock. Today I ate it about 6. I wanted to give myself some time to digest and get comfortable because I had chili. Whenever I make chili, I almost always get that, that bloated, gassy, these beans and not a lot of beans, but beans and onions and stuff. So, you know, you could be, I could have done it at 8 o'clock and been very uncomfortable, but doing it at 10 was probably a little bit better. So, how's everybody doing? I want to pop an antacid real quick. Discuss. Um, we're going to talk about Dragon Ball Daima, episodes 4 and 5. I think I talked about 4 last week, but also want to talk about it again. We're going to talk about the Netflix show Twilight of the Gods, which I watched this week. It's an animated show. I was just told about it, so I decided to check it out. And I have some thoughts on it. I'm going to give a pretty much a quick review of it. If you haven't seen it, maybe you may want to see it first. I also read Absolute Superman and Absolute Batman from DC Comics. And we'll give my thoughts on those as well. Again, I go to the comic book shop Friday, and I'm going to have a big pickup of stuff that I did not get because I didn't go to the shop at all in October. And usually I go once a month to the comic book shop. So now it's going to end up being a month and a half of material. So I'm going to have a whole lot of junk to read through, which means I probably won't need to go to the comic book shop in December either. So we shall see. Depends on how much free time I end up having, and the weather and everything. I don't I don't want to have to go so far if it's going to be snowing and cold and shit. But I do have to go Friday too because I it's bad enough. I'm probably gonna have to carry a box. It's gotten that bad before that they just put my stuff in a box underneath underneath all everything, and they just grab the whole box, and I was just walking out of there with a box on my shoulder, like, oh my god. Um, but that's probably what's about to happen Friday. Hopefully, it's not too heavy. I know I got Trigun in there. The second volume that was $50. Last time I checked, Comic Hub, I had almost $200 worth of stuff in there. All right, that's not going to be fun. I can tell you that much. Parting with that kind of money is not fun. It's not really. But since you only got to do it once a month, it's not too bad. You know, it's manageable, I guess you could say. So let's get started. Dennis King, WG Phil, how you guys doing? I'm glad you guys are doing well. Glad you guys stopped by, even if it's only two of you so far. Maybe more will come in. Maybe more will listen to it tomorrow. Um, and we'll talk about it, everything. We'll talk about Dragon Ball Daima first. The pace picked up with episode 5. So let's take a step back to episode 4. Um, so episode 4, for those of you who are not watching or um, not sure whether you will like the show, Dragon Ball Daima is not Dragon Ball Z. It is a love letter to all the Dragon Ball projects so far. It has bits and pieces of Dragon Ball GT, Dragon Ball Z, and the original Dragon Ball. They haven't really gotten to the point of, well, there's even still some elements of Dragon Ball Super, as we see King Goma's his army. They all look like Beerus. They all look like purple cats. So there's bits and pieces of everything. People just notice the GT stuff, but there's a lot of interesting bits that come from the original Dragon Ball as well. But just to catch everybody up, Goku and Glorio and Shin are on their way to Kandan Castle, which is the king of the third demon world. This is the person that Glorio supposedly works for, and that's was episode 4 was about. They found these bugs, the Medi bugs. They allow you to revive, so they revive stamina. They heal, and there's a fusion bug. There's a bunch of different kinds of bugs Goku begged Glorio to buy. Why he still can't pronounce this guy's name is just a joke, really. But one of the things I wanted to talk about that I don't think I talked about last week is that Goma has been robbing the villagers who cannot pay taxes. He has been robbing them of their life force. So he's been stabbing them in the neck with some kind of machine that drains 9 years of their life. So what you learn in episode 5 is that the average lifespan in the third demon world is 1,000 years, which Goku is like, well, that's plenty. And then you find out that Pansy is 82. She's a little girl. She's 82. She's not fully grown yet. So you find out that Goma is taxing the people. He also has these things around their necks, similar to if you're familiar with Task Force X, aka the Suicide Squad, where they are controlled from a distance by bombs being strapped to their, implanted into their necks. On Dragon Ball, they're wearing these collars, almost like the collars that you see in the X-Men, where they give the mutant inhibitors, where these are magic rings that are around the necks of the people that are controlled by Goma's wands. So his soldiers have these wands that can control these things that are around their necks, and so they can't run away. If you try to run, they can light the thing up and bring it back. And so they've been strapping this object to the people's back of their heads and draining their life force. And I just wonder, like, it's an old school thing to see somebody say, I'm going to raise your taxes, and everybody like, no, what, you can't do that. Because in real life, people start talking about raising taxes, they get very happy. Yay, raise my taxes. It's the cost of being in a society. But you see King Goma raising taxes, you get upset. Huh. Why is that? So that was interesting. Anyway, I like the idea of them stealing life force because it's clear that they're stealing the life force to redistribute it. In episode 1, Goma promises Neba that he was going to extend his life by 1,000 years. And once you realize that they have Dragon Balls, but they can't use them because the Tamagimis are just too badass, nobody can beat them, that there has to be some other way of extending people's lifespans. And this seems like the way to do it. They're stealing the life from the villagers to feed their political allies. I mean, is Toriyama on the nose, or is he based, or what? How based is that? That the political elites, your king, is literally draining your life force and taking your money and redistributing it to other people who are beneficial to him. That is excellent storytelling by Toriyama-sama. So episode 4 ends with Goku whooping the ass of Goma's army as they bully these villagers. And then we see Pansy, who tried to help the villagers, and her wasabi bomb didn't work out, but she got a taser or some sort. Anyway, everybody watches Goku as he whooped their ass with the Nyoibo, aka the power pole. And then episode 5, we actually are introduced to Pansy. So I'm going to go through the episode just really briefly. So Pansy, as we learn, is the princess of the third demon world. Her father is King Kandan, who is as suggested, the king of the demon world. He is supposedly the guy who hired Glorio to find the people who could defeat King Goma, because his plan is to overthrow Goma and become the king of the supreme ruler of the all demon worlds once Goma falls. So Glorio shows up with Goku. And Goku has to prove that he is as powerful as everybody is talking about. This leads to an extended fight scene between Goku and all of these various servants and warriors that are in Kandan's court. And Goku pretty much just mops the floor with these guys, and he transforms into a Super Saiyan just to show off. Not like he really needed it. And everybody is pretty much in awe of Goku's power and his abilities. It's almost unlike anything ever seen in the demon world before, which is eyebrow raising, because it's like, well, it's like seeing the original Dragon Ball over again when Goku was special. You know, he could do things other people couldn't do, and they will always be shocked and in awe. Like, one of my favorite scenes in all of Dragon Ball, it's probably my favorite scene in all of Dragon Ball, when Goku goes to Muscle Tower and to fight the Red Ribbon Army. That's probably, actually, it's probably second after his storming of the Red Ribbon base, when he ends up fighting, I think his name is General Black. You know, it was so insane that Goku was just nothing more with the power pole, shows up to Muscle Tower and just proceeds to kick the shit out of the Red Ribbon Army. And there's no, observers watching at the time, but he's kicking the hell out of these people. And you, as a fan, are like, oh my God. I mean, Goku is just whooping, just mauling these people. And it's very low effort. But sometimes you need that to reestablish how badass Goku is. Because sometimes you see him in these star-crushing fights, and, you forget how it could look if Goku was just fighting like normal people. But then in Dragon Ball Daima, they remind you with the bar fight, with Goku fighting these soldiers, with Goku fighting Kandan's warriors, that he is leagues above, even in base form, even as a child, leagues above most fighters. He's literally the strongest under the heavens. That was the whole point of the Tenkaichi Budokai. And so Goku, and Glorio gets a new plane because his plane got stolen from King Kandan, and they're going to find the Tamagamis to get the Dragon Ball. So there is, for the first time in many an episode, I believe, we get a glimpse at what Goma has been doing. And this is very interesting because now we realize why he kept Dende alive. He kept Dende alive so that he can create him some new Dragon Balls. So you get the idea that although Neba is loyal to Goma, or is he loyal to Goma? He obviously can't control him, otherwise he wouldn't need to bribe him. But he figures if he raises Dende, Dende will serve him. But if all of the characters retained their memories, even after they were turned into children, wouldn't Dende retain his memories of being turned into a baby by Goma? Then him raising Dende wouldn't work. But then again, maybe he doesn't know that. But it's a solid enough plan that he's going to raise Dende so that Dende can create some new Dragon Balls for him. We also learned, as we should have known by now, that Glorio he's a liar. he lies a lot. He he lied and said that the Saiyans were from the second demon world. Um, he tells a lot of lies, and he also leaves out stuff. You know, for instance, King Kandan did not know that Goku had been turned into a child. Um, this is something that pretty much only the Supreme Kai cares about. Only Supreme Kai cares that Glorio has been lying and is, shifty. Goku doesn't think it's a big deal. Now in the uh in the little preview for the next episode, episode 6, you see Glorio and Goku are actually fighting. Now we don't know if they're training or what they're doing, but Glorio is throwing punches at Goku. And Goku is in base form, just not taking it seriously at all. Now, from what we've seen of Glorio, he has some combat ability, but we can pretty much guess he's not on the same level as Goku. But he has been observing Goku quite a bit, and he hasn't had the same responses as everybody else. While everybody else seems to be amazed at Goku, he seems to be like, very like, I see. So is it like maybe he's a spy and he's spying on how strong these characters are, and he's going to write some kind of report or something? Maybe. There's a lot of conspiracy theories out there about different characters being more sinister than, and usually it's not the case. Like everybody thought the Grand Priest in Dragon Ball Super was like some kind of super sinister character. It turned out to be nothing at all. He just turned out to be an old nice guy. It turned out to be nothing. But this time they literally are leaving breadcrumbs that Glorio is up to no good. He's telling bold-faced lies. He's pretending to be dumber than he really is. Like he says he doesn't know what ki is. Like, what's that? And you're like, how did he not know what ki is and he can fly? Maybe it's a different kind of energy they use in Demon World, but he's constantly lied about different things or left things out. So he's very suspicious. He's a very suspicious guy. And he apparently didn't tell King Kandan that Goku had been turned into a child. Pansy, in terms of a character, she seems to be an amalgamation of Bulma and Chi-Chi. And that would make her father the Ox King for the most part. This is where we get the parallel to the original Dragon Ball, where the Ox King was befriended Goku after Goku saved Chi-Chi and actually helped put out the fire on his mountain, even though I think it was Master Roshi that put the fire out. But Goku was of assistance at the time. And he actually offered Pansy in marriage to Goku if he could defeat Goma, which was a nice, humorous thing. Especially when we found out that, Goku was already married. She's like, what? So we found out that, Pansy, she's really young. And so she's trying to use magic power. She's trying to use telekinesis. But she's not very good at it. She has a very rudimentary ability to use it. When you could compare it to other people who use telekinesis in Dragon Ball, Frieza being one of those people where he picked up entire boulders and thrown them at people. Cell created the entirety of the Cell games arena using telekinesis. It's pretty humorous that she could lift one rock, and it took all the energy in her body to do so. But it goes to show that there's some intrigue there. So I'm thinking that her powers are going to bloom as the show goes on. She's going to get stronger at it and better at it. But her thing is that she's good with machines. And that's why she's allowed to go with Goku and his team, even though Glorio didn't want her to go. She's useful because she's good with machines. So she's going to be the Bulma of that team. They have this chubby thing named Hybe or Hibiscus this guy is going to be the guy that's going to go and collect Bulma, Vegeta, Piccolo, and Kibito. And so that, or the B team, I guess you could say, is going to be on their way to Daima, to Daimakai, the demon realm, soon enough. So that's the episode ends with the plane that King Kandan gave them crashing due to it being overweight due to all of Ponzi's gimmicks and clothes and stuff that she put on the ship, even though Glorio told her to take all that shit off there. So episode 5, much better than the previous episodes before it. Better pacing, better comedy, better action. Goku was actually less annoying in this episode. He does do something silly like Ponzi asked him if he could do magic, and he used his tongue to lick his nose, and and she was like, "That is not magic." But everything was better than this. They seemed to find the right mixture. I know everybody is tired of Goku just steamrolling and the bowling pins and all that kind of stuff, but some people are into it. I like it because it's going back to the roots of what Dragon Ball is, and they haven't completely left behind everything that came before it. Like I said before, there's elements of GT, there's elements of the original, there's elements of Z, and we're getting a little bit of everything. So I like the adventure element of it, but I understand that it's not for everybody. I said this last week. It's not for everybody. It's not going to work for everybody. But and even when it came to Super, I think I talked about this last week as well. Super, it didn't really start jumping until the Goku Black arc. That's when it was pretty much crashing the internet every week. I mean, I knew Dragon Ball Super was on the air during that time, but the hit stuff got my attention at first, but it didn't last very long. Everybody was kind of impressed by that for a while, and then you kind of went back to sleep. Then the Goku Black arc happened, and we were off to the races after that. Everything after that was pretty much 100% interest in the product. So it's gonna take a while. Once they start fighting like the Tamagamis and stuff like that, it might end up being a really big deal on the internet. But right now, I hear is that it's a moderate success. It's doing okay, but it's not the runaway success that Dragon Ball should be. I think part of that is due to the pacing. The pace of the first 4 episodes was not good, if we're being honest. Even if the content was fine, the art was great. The characterization of Goku I could do without, but a lot of it was pacing. Just nothing seemed to happen. And there's no need to watch it yet because nothing has happened yet. Outside of Goku being turned into a kid, there's been no major developments since then. People are talking about these little nuggets of, what Dragon Balls came first. Was it the ones in Super, or was it the ones in the Demon world? That's not enough to get people's juices flowing. It's enough to get the Dragon Ball fandom to pay attention, and you see a flood of videos about that. But the masses, what they want is, the big fights. That's what they want. So before we move to the next subject, let's see what y'all have to say about Dragon Ball Daima episodes 4 and 5. Loki07 says, I think once the English dub comes out, more people will talk about it. He says, I also think people having issues with the pacing has to do with what we are getting an episode a week compared to watching it every weekday after school. I don't think so. Because remember, Dragon Ball Super, it was once a week as well, but it didn't feel like anything had happened yet. Until Hit dropped Vegeta. Then everything was like, oh, people were like, oh, okay, that's worth talking about. This Hit guy, it could be interesting. And they blew that off a little quick with the hit Goku duel and all that. It kind of went away kind of fast. But the Goku Black arc, it really kept things. It got people, and it hooked them for the rest of the show's history. I know it didn't. It hooked me for the rest of the show's history because I wasn't really watching Super up to that point. But Dragon Ball Daima, I think a lot of it is the stakes are low right now. Um, Goku is not in any danger. You know, he's still giggly and everything is all fun and whimsical with the Disney-esque music. And it makes me want to play Final Fantasy. It really does. It makes me want to play like Chrono Trigger, like all of these old RPG games that I loved as a kid. And that's really the vibe that you get from it. If you're a hardcore Dragon Ball Z fan and you didn't watch the original Dragon Ball and you didn't read the manga, this is not going to be for you. It's not going to work. Then that's why you probably think everything is a GT reference because you're like, oh, GT was the last time he was a kid. Like, not everything is a GT reference. But there has been some GT references for sure. Like, it's not been something that has that people are playing you for a fool. WG Phil says, I'm hoping to see Kaioken in Daima. I think there's plenty of opportunities for him to use Kaioken. I think he could have used the Kaioken to escape these guys in episode 5. But, I don't know. It seems that I saw a lot of people, they were complaining about, Goku being nerfed and everything. I think keeping the battles low stakes is good because they're going to ramp the stakes up later, clearly. But right now, that they're going to make it out because Super exists. But you do want to know, and I am very interested in what happens to the rest of these characters. And that's kind of where the Dragon Ball universe stands is we know nothing's going to happen to Goku or Vegeta or Piccolo or even Goku or Bulma. That's going to be permanent. But we have no earthly idea what's going to happen to Panzi or Glorio or King Kandan or King Goma or Dr. Rinsu. So slowing everything down so that we can get to know these characters. So when something happens to them, they get killed off or married or whatever at the end of the series, we will actually care. That's a positive. I think that's been the one positive thing about all the time we spent with Glorio is that if something were to happen to him near the end of the series, it would be more eventful. If he turns out to turn heel later, that would be more eventful because we actually got to know who he is and got to know him as a character. If he is killed and was not able to be resurrected or whatever, we at least got a chance to know who he is, So slowing the pace down so that we can get to know Panzi and Glorio and all these other characters, that's good. But at the same time, if you're not into the adventure shtick, you're not gonna get with it. And a lot of the Dragon Ball fandom is punch guy in the face. We'll figure out why later. Like that's kind of how it is. And they're not really into these. Like I've seen people redraw 99% of like the Tournament of Power and the Goku Black arc with the Z style from the original airing. I know that really burns some people because they're like, Kai is better. They're like, nobody gives a shit about that. They'll draw it with so you have like Zamasu with like a thick neck, not like that skinny neck that they have in Super, but he's got like muscles and shit. Because nobody's got muscles in Super. They're all lean. Everybody's lean. Until Goku, well, Jiren has muscles at the end. He's like very muscular at the end. But other than that, no. So like all of the character designs with them getting younger, looking younger, getting skinnier. Um, that's really that's not helping matters. Because I remember that being one of the first things people got mad at about Super is characters like Gohan and Trunks are now skinnier than they were before, and they it seems like the Japanese, I think, underestimated the aesthetics of Dragon Ball. You know how muscular the characters were, how masculine they were. They underrated that. So now they made them almost Disneyfied, where their eyes are really round, their demeanors are more cheerful. You're like, and it's the same for everybody. You know, it's like it's not as gritty, I guess you could say, as '90s Dragon Ball, which is like late '80s Dragon Ball, really. But I did see that as far as the characters were, the characterizations, the animation. I get it. I understand that, and that's gonna be another reason why Daima is gonna have to catch up. They're gonna have to put some muscle on these characters. They're just skinny kids right now. AJ3 says, I miss when the manga adaptations to anime stick to the original plot and not following the same Americanization that is happening in comic books today. I'm starting to hate the fandom culture because it keeps ruining the stories and excitement. Give me an example. What are you talking about? Lokio7 says, I would have preferred if Toriyama started Super Post Z, and when you got to see Oob's training, Goku and Oob could have gone on a Daima-like adventure. Yeah. But there's still a lot of time to play with in between the end of Majin Buu and the founding of Oob. And I understand wanting to take that and do something with that. And part of that is because in Oob's timeline, when you get to Oob, you have to figure out what you're going to do with Trunks and Goten because now they're adults. Pan is now like a teenager or an adult or something like that. You don't have children characters anymore. So you have to figure out what you're going to do with these more adult characters. And I can understand that might be problematic because that's the issue every time they try to tell a story in which Goten and Trunks are older, like in GT. Like, what do you do with them? You turn them into regular human boys who occasionally fight. Then they're no different than Gohan. You might as well not be there at all at that point. You know. So in my head canon, they could have turned everybody into a kid except the people who are already kids, and had Goten and Trunks and Gohan be the main characters of Dragon Ball Daima. That way, Goten and Trunks could have got a chance to do something without being overshadowed by the older characters, and it would have fit, an adventure that's specifically for these kids. And Gohan could have just been like a chaperone, you know, that would have been fun. But I can understand the idea of wanting Goku to be there and for Goku to do everything. But um, I still think the pace needs to be picked up a little bit. AJ3 says, like they're going to start adding more power up levels in every Dragon Ball series into Super Saiyan 4, Super Saiyan 5, Ultra Instinct, stuff like that. Yeah, I don't think we need to continuously add more and more and more transformations. And that's why I'm okay with Daima, because it seems like whatever they're going to do in Daima is going to be Demon Realm specific. and it might not be something they can do outside of it or need to do outside of it, which can make things fun. Or they could just be doing things from before that's, better off because it's in the demon realm. But I don't think there's going to be like a need to do more transformations. You know, like I haven't. That was the one thing about Super that I was not really a super, no pun intended, a super fan of is the hair changing colors. Like that was weird to me. I never really thought it was necessary to have red hair or blue hair and all that stuff. And then there was no real um differentiation about what these things meant. There's still a lot of confusion about what these things are and what they mean. you know, so and stuff's not fully fleshed out anyway. So, but I can also understand from the people who were frustrated because Dragon Ball Super had finally started doing new stuff, and they were like, "Hey, we should continue with the Moro arc and the Granola arc." But I've also read a lot of people who don't like that stuff. They didn't like Granola. They didn't like Moro. I didn't read it myself, so I can't tell you whether it was any good or not. I watched videos on both. I think with some tweaks, both stories are interesting. But I would need to sit down and read the whole thing myself. And if I do end up reading the Dragon Ball Super manga, that is where I will start. I'm going to skip everything up to Moro. So I would just start reading from Moro forward. WG Phil says, I think superheroes underperforming killed any chance of any characters that aren't Goku or Vegeta getting the spotlight. Yeah, that might be the case. I mean, I think also the fact that Dragon Ball Daima was a 40-year anniversary kind of guaranteed that Goku was going to be the main character, and maybe he should be. Maybe it's like one of those things where they try to make someone other than Ryu the main character of Street Fighter, and that doesn't work out. It might be a thing like that. He's just too iconic of a character for you to do anything about. Like Luigi, I don't think he ever got another video game, did he? Like Luigi had like Luigi's Mansion. Did he ever have another game? It's like you would think Luigi would be just as popular as Mario, but he's not. So AJ3 says, but once the Demon Realm arc is over, what's next? I would imagine they start adapting stuff from Super. That's what I would imagine. But there's also another movie supposed to be coming out that Toriyama did some character designs and story for. So maybe there's going to be that, and then they'll start doing stuff from Super. But I also think that's why Toyotaro went on hiatus, not just because Toriyama passed away, and now he's got to do this stuff himself without Toriyama's input. But also, once they start the manga over, they're going to have to start adapting what Toyotaro puts on the page for the most part. And then it's going to be a question of who's going to dictate the stories. If even if he's left to write it, who's going to dictate what goes next? Because you remember, there's a big thing in terms of who's going to be controlling Dragon Ball from this point forward. Now that Toriyama is gone, but I would imagine, they're going to finish up Daima. Who knows how long that's going to last? Then there's going to be another movie, and then they may start up the manga. They may even start up the manga more sooner than I think. But so now you got Toyotaro having to write this stuff out himself now. It's not him and Toriyama working together on this. He's got to do it himself. So I see why it went on hiatus. Like he's now got to figure this shit out by himself. And guess what? He now has to design his own characters too. So it's going to be interesting. Maybe Toriyama left a bunch of character designs laying around and he can use those. But from what it sounds like, he's going to have to do it himself. Loki07 says, I like the idea of Goku and Vegeta bribing Beerus and Whis with food so Whis can train Trunks and Goten. Also, there are at least 20 episodes of Daima. Yeah, I heard that there's at least 20. That's another 15 weeks. 15 weeks is 3 months. So it'll be going until January at the very least. That's good. Um, the pace as the pace picks up, it ought to get better. WG feels that I think only Americans want to erase the past to make new characters the spotlight, similar to your analogy of it's Kamala's turn. Yeah, I think that's also a whole thing is, you know, there is a tug of war about the Dragon Ball, not just, through the characters, in terms of who's gonna, Shueisha or Toei or the other guy who's gonna run it. Like, it's not just that; it's also what the Japanese audience prefers versus what the Western audience prefers. The Western audience liked Z. Most of these people didn't even watch the original Dragon Ball. While Z was popular in Japan, but the manga is really, the original Dragon Ball is what they know Goku from. That's what the most popular incarnation of the character. That's why they keep putting Goku back as a kid, because that was the biggest thing in Japan. While in the West, the big thing was him as an adult. So there's going to be a tug of war there where are the Japanese making Daima specifically for the Japanese audience, or are they making it for the Western audience too? If it's made for the Western audiences are not really all that interested in Kid Goku. So that's something to consider, that they might be looking insularly on this one and saying we're making this one for the Japanese. Because it's 40 years in Japan. I don't think it's 40 years in the States. But yeah, because Dragon Ball started in 1984 in Japan. I don't know how long it took for it to come out in the United States, but that was probably the thinking, is that they're going with the Japanese audience. So that's something to consider. I'll get to it. He says, Loki says, do you like boxing? I watch boxing every once in a while. AJ3 says, been watching celebrity meltdown videos on YouTube about the Trump and the election. Now that Trump is president again, does that mean we're going to bring back the edgy and vulgar content? Nope. I think what you saw last time is going to happen again, which is probably more censorship, more people deciding they're going to quote unquote fight Trump through social media and through art. It's going to be 2016 all over again. So get ready for more. I think Eric July talked about this, and he was absolutely right. I saw a clip on Twitter. Like, in 2016 was a terrible era for comic books and all sorts of media, because everybody had Trump derangement syndrome. And that permeated a lot of comics and movies and TV shows. And I think you'll just see that again. It's going to be a way of mediocre people to cope. Or like when I logged onto StreamYard, I got inundated with new terms of service, which includes now all kinds of speech codes, and you can't talk about sensitive materials. You can't talk about, they have a rule against misinformation now. And it's like, oh shit. The election was literally like 3 days ago. And now all of a sudden, StreamYard, who knows? Maybe it's been that way and I haven't been paying attention. Again, I haven't used StreamYard in a little while now, maybe a week or two. So maybe it's been there for a while, but I'm like, man, all it took was for Trump to win. And all of a sudden, the terms of service is changing on everything. The short reprieve that we've got from Trump-related allegories is just going to turn around and come right back, but whatever. All right, so that's Dragon Ball Daima. Now I want to talk about Zack Snyder's Twilight of the Gods. And I almost turned this off 5 minutes in. I'm glad I finished it, because I nearly turned it off 5 minutes in. Why did I almost turn it off? For starters, let's talk about the animation. The animation is fine. It reminded me a lot of the Gennady Tartakovsky Primal and Samurai Jack kind of animation. The fight scenes were fantastic. It was, violent, bloody, probably too much gratuitous sex for me. You know, I just feel like, the necessity of adding sex into everything it's not adult to me. It's actually kind of immature, I guess you could say. Especially since some of the sex is homosexual and some of it is bestiality, believe it or not. It's like this is very weird. We could do without. Yes, we know that there is some bestiality in Norse myth, but my God, do we have to be so vulgar? But I almost turned it off 5 minutes in because we got our strong, independent woman saving a man, and you got a story about Vikings, right? And we start out and there's Vikings, there's Viking warriors, and you got this man, he's cowering, and as this other man is about to kill him. And then here comes this woman who's much smaller than he is, and she's just butchering all these people. And you're just like, oh my God, are you serious? Like, less than 5 minutes into this show, we got the big beardy Viking guy cowering in fear as some woman saves his life. I should just turn this shit off right now. But I finished it. Um, I finished it and I enjoyed it. You know, I'm not one of these people that is that disgusted by the strong, independent female trope. Um, because I like Red Sonja, I like Vampirella, I like Kill Bill. You know, I like Black Canary, I like the Black Widow, I like female characters, but I don't like that the emasculation of male characters that goes with it sometimes. You know, and that was one of the things that was a running gag throughout the series that I didn't like is that the male characters just kept getting emasculated, and I wasn't a fan of that. And even after I watched all 8 episodes of this, I still that still stuck with me as something that bothered me about this program. So, what is the Twilight of the Gods even about? Well, it's a simple story, really. The warrior woman is named Sigrid. She is a giant of the Aesir. She meets a man on the battlefield. His name is Leif. He is the king of some clan of Vikings, and he seeks to marry her. Um, so he goes back to his people, says that he's going to marry her. She's going to bear them children, or maybe not. And I was like, oh my God. The even having the conversation that she might not have them children is weird. Now, you know, there is an interesting scenario where he's telling his Leaf is telling his father about Sigrid and the marriage and everything, and there's a sword in the stone, and he's saying this is episode 1 that if his father approves, he should be able to pull the sword from the stone, and then of course he berates his father for not approving of Sigrid, and then eventually he pulls the sword out of the stone to signify that his father from beyond the grave agrees for him to marry Sigrid. So they go back to Sigrid's people who are giants, and you find out that Sigrid is a giant. She's part giant anyway, but she's little. Um, so she has the fighting prowess, which explains how she can fight, but it doesn't explain how she was able to continuously save this man's life. Anyway, they have a giant wedding. Um, and in this situation, you have Leaf trying to prove himself to Sigrid's father, and he's giving him weapon. He's giving him his weapon. He's giving him gold coins, all this sort of stuff to try to, you know, win her father over. And he finally agrees. They party for a little bit, And then we get to the inciting incident that kicks off the rest of the story. During the wedding, Thor and Balder show up. And Thor is looking for Loki. And the Giants are saying Loki isn't there. Loki is there, they just don't know he's there. He's a shapeshifter, so he's like a lizard at one point. So Thor knows that Loki is there. But he thinks that these giants are hiding Loki. The giants are atheists. They fear no gods. And they're very disrespectful to Thor. So he slaughters all of them, which was badass as fuck. It was insane. He was exploding them. He knocked their arms off. He was crushing their heads. It was crazy. It was amazing. That actually got me to continuously watch the show. Like Thor's complete eradication of this tribe of giants was badass as fuck. But so Sigrid, on her wedding day, saw all of her family murdered. And she swore vengeance against Thor. And then she gets entrapped by Loki, who wants her to kill Thor for him. And so her and Loki make a pact to kill Thor. Loki, of course, wants to kick off Ragnarok. Now, if you know anything about Norse myth, the Ragnarok is the end of the gods of Norse myth. So Loki wants to bring Ragnarok, and he wants to use Sigrid to do that. So the rest of the show is really just putting together a hunting party, getting together god-killing weapons, proving themselves to various peoples to get their assistance, and trying to kill Thor. So this is for 8 episodes at this point. The end of the show, I think, is probably quite good. It's phenomenal, actually. I don't know who wrote it. I know that Zack Snyder produced it or directed it. I have no idea who wrote this show. Whoever wrote it was pretty good at writing. I mean, again, you could tell that whoever it is was some level of progressive. But each episode furthered the plot. It was a fast-paced plot. It dragged only in one episode, really. So I already described this first 2 episodes. Episode 3, you get that Odin has demanded that Thor stay home, even though Thor demands to face the people who are pursuing him. Thor fights Sigrid one-on-one in this situation, but she can't win. It's just not possible for her to win. And Thor actually ceases his pursuit of her once she falls into the land of the Vanir. So the Vanir and the Aesir are the 2 Norse tribes, I guess you can call them, or kingdoms with their own gods or whatever. And Thor dares not step on the Vanir kingdom, or there will be war between the 2 peoples. So he leaves her alone, and she goes and gets the Vanir to help her storm Asgard so that she can fight Thor. And again, so we got a couple of episodes that involve the apples of immortality or the apples of eternity. There's the story of why Loki hates Thor, which involves Thor kidnapping Loki's children and even killing one of them. There's a lot of interesting things in here, and when you get to near the end, especially, you get that this was one of these subversive stories that was made to humanize Loki. That Loki is actually one of the good guys. There's a lot of these little lines in there where Loki says, I am only what men have made me. I exist so that men can blame me. And he calls himself the scapegoat god. That, whenever men do something wrong, they blame Loki and his tricks, right? And then you get the sad tale of Thor seducing one of Loki's children, and she's sucking him off on the beach, and Loki's watching, and he's disgusted, and Thor is murdering his children and all this kind of stuff. It's just really terrible shit, right? And it's very creepy that Thor was watching this. So it was. I mean, that Loki was watching his daughter give Thor a blowjob. That was very weird, and I don't understand why that needed to be there. So it was weird. So episode 7 is where again I almost quit the show, but I know didn't have that much time left. We get Sigrid has an argument with Leaf. Again, Leaf is the husband. He's somewhat of a peacekeeper. He's not really a warrior anymore, even though he's fighting by her side. But she shows that she kind of doesn't really respect him. And you get this with the women in the story, because there's another woman, she's a witch of some kind. She's in love with this bisexual freak guy who's like the storyteller. He's the griot of the group. When you first meet him, he's taking it up the ass. It's very strange if they would put something like that in the story. But so these women have sex with their lovers and try to sneak out while the men are asleep to protect them. And you're like, what the hell is going on here? Now, at least the witch is a witch, She's got like all kinds of magic powers and shit. But Sigrid is like a woman with like a spear or something. Like, come on. In any event, Sigrid breaks in episode 7 that she's wed to Doom. And she cannot marry Leaf. She will never marry him. And then she actually tries to pawn him off on some Vanir maiden. The two of them had a threesome with, this young lady who watched them have sex. And then they seduced her around the campfire or something. And so Sigrid tries to pawn Leaf off on this girl, saying that she will bear him children. She will do all these things for him. And I'm just like, oh my God, are you serious? But what even killed me even more was she says that he kneels too much. Who will you not kneel to? And I'm just like, oh my Lord, have mercy. She's cutting this guy's balls the fuck off. Every turn she's cutting his balls off. Like, they have so much sex on the show that you would think that it wasn't be that, but that's exactly what it is. That you take verbal abuse from these women and all this kind of stuff. It wasn't romantic at all. It was just stupid, right? But episode 8, the final episode, though, was very good. We start off with Leaf still being a loser because after Sigrid tells him she can't marry him because she has to fight Thor even if it kills her, she tries to pawn him off on the Shield Maiden. So she stabs Leaf in the leg so that he can't follow her, because why would you need a man to follow you, right? This is ridiculous. So then Leaf kind of awkwardly, for some reason, tells the Shield Maiden, oh yes, Sigrid took off to protect me, stabbed me in the leg. She thinks that we should get married and you should have my children. So the Shield Maiden looks at him and says, well, I know the three of us laid together, but you weren't the one I wanted. And I was like, are you fucking serious? Are you serious? Oh yeah, I had sex with both of you, but I wasn't interested in you at all. Like, you weren't supposed to walk away with anything in this story except for him being a fucking loser, right? He kneels to everybody. He doesn't win any fights. His wife stabs him in the leg to keep her from following her. And now she's like, go marry the Shield Maiden. He tells the Shield Maiden what his wife said. He was like, I just kind of wanted to fuck her. I didn't want to fuck you. And I'm like, this guy's a eunuch. This is terrible. This is truly terrible material. Anyway, outside of that, the rest of the episode is actually pretty good. Thor is just absolutely just killing these Vanir guys. He's just really just racking up bodies. He's taking these guys apart, no problem. And Loki spins this tale about how one of his children is destined to die by Thor's hand unless Sigrid kills Thor first. And this is what is made Sigrid think that Loki is serious about killing Thor and bringing about Ragnarok to protect his children. And she's like, well, why don't you kill him? And he was like, well, I could kill Thor, but that wouldn't change anything. Gods die at the hands of other gods all the time. But if he were killed by immortal, well, that will upset the apple cart, that the mortals can kill gods. And she was like, it fits right into what her tribe of giants believe. Yeah, the gods are worthless. They're good for nothing. They don't fear the gods. They'll kill them. No problem. So she buys this, Now, I had left out, well, I did mention the witch, that the witch exists. And she has magic powers. She has visions or whatever. She goes to see Odin. And Odin has split himself into 3 visages. He has a missing eye because he's already hung himself on the Yggdrasil and all that stuff. You need to know Norse mythology and all that. And he already knows, certain things about the future. But he wants to know what's going to happen further along into the future. And his wife Freya was supposed to have these visions, but it turns out that she had given her powers away before they got married. And so this witch has him. And the witch is the one who is seduced the griot gay boy or whatever. And Odin is saying, okay, you show me what is going to happen in the future. And so the witch says magic has a cost. And last time Odin looked into the future, it cost him 1 eye. So what is it going to cost him this time? He said he doesn't care. So she says, okay, well, last time it cost you an eye. This time you can't look back. So she shows him the vision of Thor being killed and basically the end of the Norse gods. After Thor is killed, there's Ragnarok. Everybody dies. And Odin is replaced with Jesus Christ. So Odin sees Jesus and is seeing that nobody believes in the Norse mythology anymore. Him, Thor, all of them are gone and replaced with Christianity. And he goes berserk and kills him. And well, he kills her rather. He gutted her. He ripped her guts out, which is crazy. She survived that, by the way. Well, she reincarnated. So Odin lost the ability to remember who he was or what was going to happen. He knew the future, but he couldn't remember the past because he had to sacrifice that. So the big fight comes. Loki is there trying to fight Thor. He's getting his ass beat. Sigrid's getting her ass beat. Then Thor is finally going to kill that Leaf guy because he's a piece of shit. Who cares about him except Sigrid, right? So Thor is about to smash his head in. And this is hilarious. So Thor is about to smash his head in. And I think somebody threw a spear or something. And what happens is Balder gets hit with the spear, so he dies accidentally. And in Norse mythology, this is what kicks off Ragnarok, is the death of Balder the Brave. So Balder is killed instead of Thor. And he dies on, protecting Thor. And Thor just absolutely goes nuts He wants to kill Sigrid, and she doesn't have any weapon to protect herself. And so what ends up happening is Freya jumps in there. She holds Thor as he's going on a just absolute tantrum. And he bursts into tears. He bursts into tears because his brother has been killed. And she teleports him to Valhalla. Teleports him. He didn't die. He teleported him to Valhalla. So Baldur is dead. And now Ragnarok can begin. And Loki, is like, great. This is great. We didn't get Thor. That's fine. But Thor's gone. Odin's gone crazy. Thor is no longer an issue. And Baldur is dead. This is wonderful. And so he stabs Sigrid and says, Thor is in Valhalla. You can catch him there. And she just stabs her and she dies. He kills her. And I was like, that's fantastic. Because that's what the fuck should happen when you make a deal with the devil. Loki is the devil. All this bullshit about him being the scapegoat, all this shit about his children, it's all lies. That's literally what Loki is. He's the liar god. He lies all the time. He always spins webs. He knows how to manipulate you. So he murders Sigrid in front of Leif, who does nothing, of course, because, what else do you happen when you murder a guy's wife right in front of him, right? So you get the scene where Sigrid wakes up in Valhalla, and the first person she sees there is Thor. And Thor tells her that the two of us have been manipulated by people beyond, our comprehension. And so she's trapped in Valhalla with Thor, and she can't fight him. And I'm just like, what is going on? It feels like there will be a second season of this. At the same time, I don't know if there will be. I think I enjoyed it a lot, even though I didn't really care for some of the presentation of some of the male characters. It showed you that Sigrid was absolutely delusional. Like she fought Thor 3 times. She won 0 times, which was interesting because she kept surviving due to either Thor pitying her or some other kind of circumstance. Like there was a point in time where Thor and Baldur had discussed letting Sigrid live. And so Thor, after he destroyed all of her assistants from the Vanir guys, he said, show me your white shield and I'll let you live. You just go on about your business. And this is where she gets her big chance to give her speech about how her family had white shields when Thor killed them. And she refuses to surrender to Thor because she doesn't fear any gods. And she wraps her marriage. She had like a crown of thorns or something like that. She wore crown of flowers. And she tied it around her spear. And that's what she ended up killing Baldur with. And she threw the spear and it hit Baldur instead. So it was a good series. I didn't like how they wrote any of the male characters except Thor, who really all he was like a philandering, murderous psycho. But the depictions of his power were fantastic in the series. Him making people's heads explode. He suffered virtually no damage in the entire series. I mean, near the end, they scratched him here and there, but for the most part, he dog walked everybody he fought, which was humorous. And there were other fights too that were fun. They fought like a giant werewolf, a giant serpent. All that stuff was fun too in the other episodes. The story around the campfire, that was kind of the most padded episode. That was basically just everybody telling their backstory, you know. That's when you find out that the gay boy was like, he had, it was humorous. So when you not when you first meet him, at least I don't think so. He was having sex with some woman, and then you find out he's having sex with her and her brother. I'm like, ugh, it's just gross shit, right? But you find out that he was Leaf had murdered his family and let him live, and that's what put Leaf off of War, and because he had also been manipulated by Loki into murdering these people. So the gay boy, whose name I don't even remember, didn't write it down. He had been injured and beat up, and a young fella had found him on the road after he got jumped, nursed him back to health, and then he was having sex with him, and the guy's brother caught him. Then you find out that the law says that men may lay with men if they've conquered them, but never in love. And so when in front of the village, he was accused of being gay and was going to get killed. So he says, I call you a liar and I challenge you to a duel. So they dueled over it, and the gay boy cheated and won, ended up killing the guy's brother, ended up losing his lover because he murdered his brother in front of everybody. I was like, that's sad. Was I supposed to? I don't know how I was supposed to take that, but that was sad. But that was actually when Secret becomes a bit of an interesting character, because you learn more about her backstory too. That she was a child of giants who she didn't fit in that world. She was too small for everything, and they basically put it in almost like a poem. Like, her feet never touched the floor. Like when she sat in her father's chair, her feet never touched the floor. And because all the chairs are made for giants, right? And so she left home to see her mother's people, even though we never see her mother. And that's how she ends up finding Leaf and finding love of her own. And Leaf built her a chair so that her feet may touch the floor. And he comes across as a very sweet guy, but a little too sweet because she cut his balls off at every turn. I mean, it's a good show. If you can withstand some of the, it's not like a lot of homosexuality in it, but if you can withstand some of that stuff and some of the egregious, emasculation of males, it's fine. I enjoyed it. I would suggest it to other people if you're into, if like you like the animation of like Samurai Jack, or like I said, Gennady Tartakovsky's Primal, you would like that too. Egil the Poet, I didn't know what his name was, but there it is. I didn't write down the names of most of those characters because I didn't know them, but the wolf guy was fun. The dwarf character was fun too. Like it was also like an adventure RPG. Let's go build a party and hunt gods kind of gimmick. It was fun. I just wish the male characters were better presented. Like, this is a story about Vikings. and all of the males are like subservient to women. Like, that don't sound like no Viking story I ever heard of. I'm pretty sure there ain't nowhere in Norse mythology. Very weird stuff. Just very weird stuff. All right, so we talked about Dragon Ball Daima, and we talked about Twilight of the Gods. I got a little bit more time left. Fear. That's the dwarf, right? We're gonna talk about Absolute Batman and Absolute Superman, which I actually read. So Absolute Batman. Fuck, I forgot who wrote it. Scott Snyder wrote it, if I remember correctly. Who did the art? I didn't write down who did the art. God damn it. It doesn't matter. Anyway, the Absolute Universe is DC Comics once more tinkering with the origins of these characters, tinkering with the origins of Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. It started out with these three. I haven't read the one for Wonder Woman. Um, maybe I'll read it if I can find a free copy of it somewhere. I'll read it. But I read Batman and Superman, and of the two, I probably like Superman more. But the both of them had the same issue, and it's a similar issue in all of American comics at this point in time. There's simply not enough action. You know. Um, so Superman is written by Jason Aaron, and the art is by Rafa Sandoval. Batman is Scott Snyder and Nick Dragotta, along with Frank Martin, who I think did the colors. So Absolute Batman, I believe, came out first, and they tinkered with Batman's origin. So now the Waynes are not rich, they're middle class. And Batman is huge and bulky. I don't understand why he's so big and bulky. The Gotham is a little bit different too. It's a more psychotic Gotham where you have this gang running around killing a bunch of people. Black Mask, he's got a Mega Mind head for some reason, but he's gang leader in Gotham, and he's trying to assassinate Jim Gordon. And it's a similar Batman story with him going around. He's brutal. He's stabbing guys, and he's shooting people with shotguns, but they're not dying. Like, he's brutal, but still not lethal. It's not my favorite story because it's another one of these things where it puts Alfred in a combat position. So Alfred is like coming to Gotham, and he's pursuing Batman, and there's all these confrontations between the two of them where they're fighting, and Batman's getting the best of him. But those are like later in the series. I think it took maybe, I know Superman literally took like 20 pages before somebody threw a punch. And that's what I mean about it. It's too slow. It's padded so many words, and a lot of the words don't actually mean anything. There's a lot of talking about nothing, a lot of poetry about how great Gotham used to be, how Gotham used to have a heartbeat. But a lot of people talked about the Gordons being black now. So that means that Batgirl is going to be black. I don't care about none of that. Jim Gordon being black, we all know that they're redheads, so they knew they were going to flip on black. They do that to everybody. Every redhead in comic books or movies for the last decade has been turned into black people. There are no Irish people anymore. They're all Negroes now. So you knew that was going to happen, and then everybody gaslights you into tell you it's not happening. Even though nobody can explain why they're doing this. Why specifically are they being turned black? All the redheads and everything are being turned black. I have heard zero explanation for this from anybody. Most people just act like you're not supposed to care. I just want to answer to the question, why is that happening? But in any event, Black Mask, who is kind of, would you consider him an A-level Batman villain? I would consider him like a B-level Batman villain. He's beneath like Two-Face and Penguin, right? He tries to assassinate Jim Gordon. At least I think he might have. I didn't take notes as I was reading it, but I think he did assassinate Jim Gordon. In any event, that's the world of Absolute Batman. Batman's not rich anymore because, heavens to Betsy, you can't be a superhero and be rich these days. You absolutely have to be, middle class. So they changed the origin of Batman so that he won't be rich, which is the most important thing, is that all the redheads are black, and if you are rich, we knock you down one or two pegs so that you're not rich anymore. That's the important bit here. But Bruce Wayne is, just a more normal kid than prior, but he's had like some special training. And it looks great. I mean, the art is fantastic in the book, really. The writing is not bad. Again, the issue is that it's too much talking, not enough action. I mean, if you just want to look at pictures, it's a great book to just look at the pictures. It's drawn extremely well. I'm never thrilled when Alfred is in an action role. Unless you're going to do something slick with Alfred, I'm just never really that interested in seeing Alfred in a fighting role. Um, I said if you're going to write a Batman story that involves Alfred in a fighting role, make Alfred Batman and make Bruce Robin. That would explain everything, right? But instead, they keep doing this thing where Alfred is like some kind of MI5 agent or something like that. I'm like, I don't know about that. It's kind of weird to me, but whatever. But it's not a terrible series. It's not the best thing I've read in terms of well, Green Arrow is also a socialist, so he can be rich. It's okay to be rich if you're a communist. It's not okay to be rich if you're not. So, pay attention who they allow to be rich, right? But it won't be too long before they start doing stories where Green Arrow isn't rich either. But you get it's basically the same. Batman's parents are killed in Crime Alley, except now he's a middle class kid who kind of grew up poor, and he's into fighting, and he's trying to work it out on the streets. I mean, it's not too extreme in terms of a character change. It's just another opportunity to make the Waynes normal people instead of philanthropists. I'll get it mixed up with philanderer. But that's pretty much it. Absolute Superman is a similar situation that they've done. They created a caste system in Krypton where Kal-El's family is on the lower rung of it. They're the laborers, they're labor class. And this explains the S symbol on their chest because that's the symbol of the labor class. And you see that his parents were people who questioned authority. And so they were confined to the labor class, despite how their genius levels of education and how they basically built a system where Krypton is ruled by scientists, and there's only two classes of people. There's the scientists who have like a sun on their chest, and then there's the labor class who have the big S, Superman S on their chest. And again, like I said, his family is consigned to the labor class due to questioning orthodoxy that have to do with Krypton. And so his parents are punished for being, free thinkers. And so nobody listening to them when they mention that the Kryptonians, their mining is destroying the environment. And ultimately, this is what causes Krypton to explode or something like that. And then we catch up with Kal-El. It's 20 pages into the goddamn series at this point. And he's in Brazil, surrounded by peacemakers who are operating for the Lazarus organization. And they're watching some kind of mine in Brazil where the people are mining diamonds. And they put them into the mine where they're getting asbestos and all, this kind of shit, right? Every mine is filled with horrible stuff, asbestos and black mold, and they don't care about the miners. So Superman goes into the mine and makes the diamonds so the miners won't have to look for it. So he's making diamonds with his bare hands, because he can do that stuff. And all the miners have to do is go into the mine and pull the diamonds out. They don't have to dig for them. So they don't have to inhale any of the stuff. So from there, um, the Lazarus peacemakers start getting suspicious that something is going on with these mines, and they find out that there's a guy in there who's doing this. And we start with the Kal-El fighting all of the peacemakers. Of course, he's a badass. He's beating their asses. But then we find out that he's wearing some kind of suit. And when I saw that he was wearing a suit, and I don't mean like, he's wearing his Superman suit. He's wearing like an Iron Man suit where this thing is regulating his usage of his powers. He's talking to it. I'm like, oh, hell no. And this Superman looks less white. He doesn't look like a white guy at all. He looks kind of South American, kind of like indigenous a little bit. S stands for surf, white trash Superman. Right, the surf class, right? Because look, you could always tell these people, they think that's where the heroes really come from. Like, there can be some poor heroes, absolutely, but poor people are mostly involved with survival, not necessarily with, taking up causes. That's what they don't understand. That's an interesting bit that they don't seem to get, is every time you get like these heroes who are, activists or whatever, these are people with free time who have already have their food, clothing, and shelter and everything already taken care of. That's why they got free time to dedicate to saving the animals and saving the environment. They don't have to worry about food and shit, right? But it's still, this probably has better action in the Superman book than in the Batman book. But it's not exactly a brutal Superman. Like, I've heard people say, like, he's a brutal Superman. Like, not really. There's no crushing of bones or anything like that. Like, Batman was out of line, like he was tearing shit up. Here you see Superman lose control of his suit, which means he loses control of his powers, and he's, his laser eyes go all over the place. And he didn't hurt anybody, but not too badly anyway. He didn't hurt any innocents or anything. And he ends up getting captured by Lois Lane, who is she belongs to whatever this organization is. She's like some kind of CIA agent or some shit. You know how it is. They don't allow women to just be like reporters or anything anymore, right? Now she has to be an active participant. She has to be a fighter. So now she's jumping out of airplanes and she's handcuffing Superman. So that's how the series, well, the first issue ends, and Superman is in handcuffs, arrested by Lois Lane for, beating up all the peacemakers. You beat the shit out of all these peacemakers, but you ain't gonna do nothing to this woman who just put a shackle on his wrist. Very weird. She is, oh yeah, she's like the police or something. And she's got like a taser to his head and everything. It's interesting stuff. Like, Absolute Superman is actually not terrible. Absolute Batman isn't bad either. I have the same problem over and over again, is there's not enough action in these stories. I miss when American comic books had testosterone. Even if the art is great, it's just too many characters standing around talking. It's just too many characters watching other things happen. And then when there is action, it's kept short. And when I read old comics and I see all these long drawn out action scenes, and they're violent and brutal and badass, you're like, man, why couldn't comics be like this? Like they've always been. It's only been like the last 10 years or so where you see all these people standing around and not much happening, So it's unfortunate, man. But these are not bad series. I don't know how much they cost. If they cost like $4.99, I wouldn't pay it. I wouldn't pay it if it's $4.99. If they do like the normal pricing, $2.99 or more, or $2.99 or less, then maybe. Matter of fact, let me see if I can find out how much this stuff costs while I'm on the line. Nope, it didn't have a price tag on here. But I mean, they're beautiful books. I mean, they really are. Really fantastic art. But you need some action in these stories, man. You need some testosterone in these stories. When you finally get to the action parts, though, they are good. You know, Batman fighting thugs, you know, stabbing them in the chest. Like shit, he's kicking their ass. It's great. You know, it just takes too long to get there. It's they pad the story with unnecessary stuff so that it takes so long to get to where you want to go. And I haven't read Wonder Woman yet, so maybe I'll read Wonder Woman, maybe I won't. They're going to do Absolute Flash and Absolute Green Lantern. All right, who's going to be the Flash they're going to use, and who's going to be the Green Lantern they're going to use? Because that would depend on what. Well, I would imagine if it's going to be Green Lantern, it has to be Hal Jordan, right? And if it's going to be Flash, I would imagine it's going. It wouldn't be Wally, would it? I mean, I think Wally is more popular, so maybe it'll be Wally. Oh yeah, I didn't watch the video yet on my Lord tomorrow. I saw it, but I didn't watch it yet. WG Phil says, I like how woke people say gender is only 2% of the population that justify their erasure in the media, but the LGBT are 2 to 5% of the population. They have to make it a point to overrepresent them. You should know by now that consistency is not a thing amongst these people. It only matters when they say it matters. Representation only matters when they say it matters. That's why you can't play the game by their rules. Because they don't even play by their own rules. They don't believe half the shit they say. There is no truth but power. Believe that. Understand that. Loki says, no wonder manga's eating American comics lunch. Kagurabachi has page layouts of blood, sand, swordplay. Meanwhile, white trash Superman is getting handcuffed by Lois Lane. You know what? I ordered Kagurabachi, by the way. That's probably sitting in that box in Dearborn somewhere. I'm gonna have to go and get it this week. I promised them I would go and pick it up Friday before it becomes too much and I won't be able to carry it. I would hate to have to buy that stuff and like, you know, put $100 on it and come back and pick up the rest. I'm about to take it all at once. But I got Kagurabachi waiting on me. I saw the panel layouts of the manga. Like I haven't read it, but that's kind of how I look at things now. If I see something and I see cool monsters or cool swordplay or cool gunplay or something, I'll check it out. And because it's rare to see that kind of stuff in America now, you know, at least from the mainstream comic companies. Even in stuff like Spawn, you don't see a lot of it anymore. Spawn used to be a crazy action book. Now it's a whole lot of talking, people in diners, people sitting at computers. Do something, punch somebody, shoot somebody, do something, please. AJ3 says Green Lantern is going to be a black woman with no power ring. Isn't that the Far Sector? No, she had a ring, but she had no way to charge her ring. I didn't hate. Well, Far Sector wasn't great, but I don't hate it as much as everybody else does. I know so many people who hate Green Lantern, Far Sector. There was some times, especially near the end, where he got really woke, but for the most part, it wasn't too bad. You know, I wouldn't suggest it as my favorite Green Lantern, but yeah, Joe Mullion, she was the Green Lantern in Far Sector. The Absolute Green Lantern series focuses on Joe Mulligan, Hal Jordan, John Stewart, and Guy Gardner after a large Green Lantern falls from the sky and crushes a town, causing widespread paranoia. There's too many Green Lanterns on Earth. it's too many Green Lanterns on Earth, dog. That's all I'm gonna say. One thing is interesting. I have not read a mainstream Marvel comic in forever. I think Daredevil was the last one I read that was mainstream, and I'm talking like recent. When I was at UMaCon, I picked up Donny Cates' Thor graphic novel. That was probably the most recent Marvel stuff I've read, and I think that's a year or so old. And the graphic novel was The God of Hammers. So it was Thor versus Mjolnir, believe it or not. Mjolnir has, merged with the Mangog. I'm like, oh my God, what the fuck? At least it had action in it, though. So I can't complain. It's at least it had action in it, for God's sake. Green Lantern is going to be trans with a cock ring. He'll be sticking his dick in the lamp. Oh, this weird stuff, man. I'm not a big Flash guy. I like Green Lantern more than Flash, but I don't want to read a Green Lantern book that has all of these. Well, they got every Green Lantern except the two Muslim. What they had the Muslim guy whose name I can't remember, and the Latino girl. So I guess they got rid of them. They're not gonna bring them into this series, huh? Because they're both Earth-based Green Lanterns too. Wally West is the Flash in the Absolute Universe, but with no Speed Force. Interesting. So he's not gonna be able to like run through time or some stupid shit like that. That's really what kept me from reading Flash comics is like the absurdity of running through time. Like he can just do whatever he wants whenever he wants. How is he in any danger? Like it's. But I like Flashpoint. Flashpoint wasn't bad though. But I'm just not a Flash guy. I like Green Lantern. Uh, I like Jeff Johns' Green Lantern. I like Black. I'm gonna say Black Arrow. I like Green Arrow. I like '80s Green Arrow though. But that actually brings me to something I wanted to say before we wrap this stuff up. One of my favorite characters that I never talk about is actually Hawkeye. I'm a big fan of Hawkeye, Clint Barton. And when I was at UMaCon, I finally was able to finish Old Man Hawkeye. I got the final volume. I had the first one. I was missing the second one. I got the second volume finally. I wasn't going to pay full price for it. But Old Man Hawkeye is fucking amazing. It's Ethan Sachs and Marco Cicchetto. 12 issues, great action, wonderful story that actually is a love letter to all the people who love Hawkeye and likes this character and is familiar with the character. And it's great. Now I know some people who are fans of Hawkeye, they start with Matt Fraction. I would actually go beyond that. Now I'm not really big into read the West Coast Avengers. No, don't read that shit. I'm not reading that shit. I'm not reading a lot of '90s Marvel slop or early 2000s Marvel slop. But I like watching. I mean, I keep saying watching. I like reading Hawkeye stories, like the Hawkeye and Black Widow series. I thought it was good. Not the recent one, not because I haven't read it, but the one from the past. I thought it was pretty good. The Hawkeye and Mockingbird, which is from like the 2000s. I thought that was pretty good. Blind Spot was tremendous. The Matt Fraction Hawkeye stuff is good too. It's a little hipsterish, but that's Hawkeye as an everyman. I love that too. But Old Man Hawkeye is probably some of my favorite shit right now. It's in the same vein as Old Man Logan and TMNT The Last Ronin, except for it's about the Avengers. And if I had to compare them, I think Last Ronin is probably still the best, like in terms of art and story. But I think Hawkeye is the best too. Old Man Logan started it, the trend, and for that reason, you got to put it on a pedestal. But it was written by Mark Miller. I forget who the artist was, and it's super edgy and it's full of edgy shit. But Old Man Hawkeye has a different emotional weight because even if you don't care as much about the Avengers, there's the way that the story happens. Like if you look at all three of these stories, right? Old Man Logan, Wolverine kills all of the X-Men because Mysterio played a trick on his senses and he couldn't tell he was fighting the X-Men and he ended up killing everybody. And this leads to him refusing to pop his claws ever again. And oh yeah, well you're right. Frank Miller, Dark Knight. You're right. I completely forgot about that. You're absolutely right on that. But so Old Man Logan, he kills all the X-Men, and he doesn't really remember doing it. It's a play on the enemy of the state, Wolverine, where he went into berserk mode and was killing people and wasn't really even thinking about it. So he feels guilty and goes and lives a life in the middle of nowhere. Um, before trouble comes his way again, so it becomes like a western almost. TMNT, The Last Ronin, Michelangelo isn't there when any of his brothers are killed. When Raph dies, Raph is alone. When Donatello dies, he's with Splinter. Michelangelo is not there. When Casey Jones and Leonardo die, Michelangelo is also not there. He didn't see them die. When an Old Man Hawkeye watches the Avengers get killed. Every one of them. Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, Black Widow, who is his girlfriend. He watches these people, Magneto and Baron Zemo, and all these people murder the Avengers right in front of him. So it's a different emotional weight. And also considering Hawkeye doesn't have powers. He's still just a regular guy, just old. Except now they're going back to the blind spot era where his vision is not great. So he's an archer who's old with decayed vision. And he's going to do this one last thing before he goes completely blind. Is he's going to get revenge on all these assholes who killed the Avengers, who all just happen to be his friends in the Thunderbolts. So you watch Hawkeye go through and murder the Thunderbolts, essentially. And if you don't care about the Thunderbolts and you don't care about the Avengers, it still has a great amount of emotional weight because in the story you get everything you need to know. Hawkeye trusts the Thunderbolts. He recruited them to aid the Avengers in this big fight against these organized villains, and he trusts them. And it's because of him the Thunderbolts were able to get the jump on the Avengers, and Magneto and the Absorbing Man and all was able to kill Thor, which makes no sense. I didn't manage to get away with Thor. I don't know. I guess you had to find some way to write Thor out of the story, right? I wouldn't just put Thor in it personally, but they had to try to get Thor out of it somehow. But whatever. Technically, what happened is Thor throws lightning at Magneto, who then misdirects it to the Absorbing Man, who now is charged up with that. He also uses the power of the Scarlet Witch, who he absorbed her powers after she's murdered by Magneto. And now he's got the powers of Thor himself and of the Scarlet Witch, and he's able to beat Thor to death with his bare hands, which I've seen Thor survive worse. So you got to write him out of the story somehow. But it's a tragic tale, but it's incredibly fun, and the art is fantastic, and the action scenes are great, and there's not a lot of people standing around talking. There's some talking, clearly, because you have to set up scenes and stuff like this. But it's tremendous, and it has tremendous emotional resonance. So I will agree that that genre of story is really great, you know. And I think the reason why I didn't put it in the same vein as Batman is because when you look at Frank Miller's Batman, you're not really looking at it as it's a dystopian future, sure, but it's not the same as Old Man Logan or The Last Ronin or Old Man Hawkeye. They made a another one too. I think it's Old Man, like I forget his Old Man Star Lord, I think. Um, but I didn't read that. But it's not the same because in these newer series, these are guys who are watching their teammates and friends get murdered in front of them, you know, or they're the last of their kind that are, you know, trying to find a way to make amends for something that they've done in the past. Loki says Hawkeye should be the twist villain in the Thunderbolts movie. The movie ends with Jeremy Renner slaughtering the entire cast in cold blood. You know, Hawkeye is that's another thing that made me like Hawkeye so much is he started out as a villain. Hawkeye started out as a character who was trying to kill Iron Man, you know, on behalf of the Black Widow, and he fails to do it, and he eventually gives up his life of crime and tries to become an Avenger, and he has an identity crisis because you know he's a guy with a bow and arrow, and he's mentored by Captain America, and he becomes kind of a Boy Scout, just like Captain America, Steve Rogers. And that leads him down the path of basically being taken advantage of by these women, you know, by Black Widow and Mockingbird and these women he falls in love with, but he doesn't have enough edge for them. If I remember correctly, both of these stories eventually end because Clint is too nice of a guy and she's too much of a badass um, murderous fuck or whatever. Like he was in the Hawkeye and Mockingbird series, which was not my favorite, if we're being honest. He basically had to stand around while Dominic Fortune flirted with his wife, you know, ex-wife. But she was selling weapons to villains, and he was like, "Wait a second!" And he was constantly preaching about her selling weapons to terrorists and all this kind of stuff. She's like, "I gotta do what I gotta do." And of course, Black Widow is a Russian spy, seductress, murderer, and he's constantly, you know, trying to preach the good word to her too. And she's like, you know, Clint, you're just too nice. And that just kind of happens to him a lot. And I know the Mockingbird thing became a little ugly later with the Mockingbird series, and they decided that Mockingbird had an affair rather than what she was raped. So they kind of they shit all over that. So that was weird, but we don't need to talk about Mockingbird. Just that's what happened. Okay. Um, but this the old man Hawkeye mixes his time as Ronin together because as Ronin he was killing people. As Hawkeye he tried not to kill. He was just he was like the inverse of Bullseye, where he was so good he could hit you and not kill you. Um, as Ronin though he was murdering people, and this was when he found out that Mockingbird was dead, and he went nuts and was killing people as Ronin. But that was Avengers Disassembled, I think. And then we find out that Mockingbird was really alive the entire time. And then that allows, when he was Ronin, that allowed them to move the Hawkeye name to Kate Bishop. And she was the Young Avengers Hawkeye. And then when Clint Barton came out of his depression of Ronin, he wanted to be Hawkeye again. But now Kate Bishop is Hawkeye. So then there's that. And I don't hate Kate Bishop as much as everybody else does because she actually serves a purpose. I wouldn't have named her Hawkeye because we already have a Hawkeye, but she serves a very specific purpose when it comes to Clint, and especially in the Matt Fraction run, where it makes him mature even though he's still kind of immature, where he's like a mentor, even if he's trying not to be, he's kind of a big brother figure to her. And it's an interesting dynamic. I love the way Matt Fraction wrote those characters. I really like that. Any incarnation that tries to make them lovers or something like that is gross and weird, and I don't like it. But their relationship is big brother, little sister kind of gimmick, and it's fun, if you do it right, But this is one of those things where Marvel insists that they both be named Hawkeye. So, but Kate Bishop is in the old man Hawkeye book because they team up in the later part of the series because Clint's eyes are going bad. So it's a fun series. I really like Hawkeye as a character. I know nobody talks about him at all though. He's just one of those characters that's kind of there. But I always have liked the character. Like I didn't like when he was Giant Man, and I really wasn't a big fan of Ronin. But if Hawkeye is in it, I'll give it a chance. Except for like the West Coast Avengers. I know ain't shit happening in that book. And I'm not really a big Avengers guy, you know. But Hawkeye fits the kind of character that I've always liked in Marvel, and both Marvel and DC, because I like Green Arrow too. I like the grittier Green Arrow though. So like Mike Grell Green Arrow, but like Daredevil, Batman, the regular guy who's maybe got a gimmick or two, but not really much on the superpowers. Like superpowers are fine. I don't have a problem with superpowers, but I always like for the heroes to be as normal as possible and to be going against abnormal circumstances. So when you read like the early stuff, the early Star-Lord stuff is really fun too. Now the early Star-Lord stuff, he's an asshole in that stuff. I'm sitting here looking at the at the omnibus now, and like 70s Star-Lord is an asshole. All right, he's basically a villain, But when you keep saying watch, when you read these characters over time, you can see the growth and everything in them. It's fun. And Hawkeye is one of the characters I wish got more attention. Man, he doesn't have any powers, so of course you're not gonna really get too involved with that. But I'm a guy who grew up on kung fu movies, you know, WMAC Masters and pro wrestling. I don't hate the hand to hand stuff. That's what goes back to Dragon Ball Daima. People don't like Daima because there's not enough Kamehamehas and not enough shit blowing up stuff. It's like, this is the good shit, you know? Like what made Dragon Ball fun was the tournaments, the Tenkaichi Budokai, that kind of shit. That's what made it fun. And I like that from my comics too. Like, yeah, you can throw a crazy powered character in there every once in a while. I like reading Thor. I love Thor. You know, but if I had my druthers, I would read mostly Batman and Daredevil and Green Arrow and Hawkeye. You know, um, because I think they fit more into the what I prefer from these characters. Even female characters, I kind of like Black Canary as well. When I read Birds of Prey, I was a big fan of Black Canary coming from that because she's a badass. She's a hand-to-hand fighter. She has powers. She had the scream or whatever, but she could beat your ass with her bare hands. I was a big fan of the Question. Um, Denny O'Neil's Question. I need to get that omnibus. It's like $60 though, but I need to get it. Maybe I'll get for myself for Christmas. But just to wrap it up. Now that I'm talking about Christmas, I'm thinking of getting all of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Ultimate Collections from in stock trades. About $20 a piece. It's 4 of them. That's $80. I can do that. Maybe I'll have to wait till like Black Friday or something. But I can rock with that. I want to read the Mirage TMNT. You know, especially since I don't know how long I'm able to hang on with Jason Aaron stuff. And I've always been a huge fan of Teenage Ninja Turtles ever since I was a kid. So, whew, had a lot to talk about tonight. Next week we're probably gonna not talk that much. Probably will talk about Dragon Ball Daima. If I find something else to watch through, I'll talk about that. I'm still watching Supernatural. I'm on season 2. I think episode 6. So I'm still working my way through that. Supernatural, the first season was very good. Second season is okay. So it's doing okay so far. Maybe it'll get great in the middle and near the end. So hopefully everybody is enjoying their, comics and movies and video games. And I'll talk to you guys next week about the same thing. Peace out.